The Bambu Lab H2D has active chamber heating and filtration, which helps with minimizing warping on some prints. Today we test some parts from Martillo Tech that add the same functionality to older Bambu Lab printers. Do they work? Let's find out. This video deals with mains voltage wiring, which has the potential to kill. This is not for beginners. Please consult a professional before attempting these procedures. Last week, I covered some upgrade parts from Big Tree Tech for Bambu Lab machines, and based on the comment section, I don't think most people were interested in them. Today, we're going to test some more upgrade parts, but these ones are specifically targeting performance and functionality, specifically heating and cooling. The Bambu Lab H2D is here, and I'm doing a review, but I started late, so to be thorough, it's going to be a while. One feature that isn't so obvious is the active cooling and heating system. Here we're set to cooling, and when we turn on the exhaust fan, we have an inlet that opens on the top front of the machine, and exhaust outlet that opens at the rear of the machine. Alternatively, if we set the mode to heating, those louvered inlets and outlets will all shut up, and as soon as we set a target temperature for the chamber, an electric heater will turn on and pump out hot air from the bottom. And even with the nozzle and bed heaters turned off, this seems fairly powerful as the temperature rises quickly. Oh, and there's built-in filtration as well. Martillo Tech are a company making accessories to add this functionality to the older Bambu Lab range. Firstly, we have the chamber heater with filtering. It's designed to fit perfectly into the space between the bed and the right-hand wall on either a X1 carbon or P1S. And despite not talking to the firmware for automatic control, there are a few options for how you can run it. In addition to heating, it's meant to make your printer healthier and safer, and that's achieved with twin filtration, as well as a carbon filter to catch nasties. Furthermore, it boasts safety protection like a thermal fuse to cut everything off if it's getting too hot. And the price for this particular product is $150 US. Now the reason Bambu Lab put this feature into the H2D, and the reason you would buy this chamber heater, is that the warmer and more stable you can keep your chamber, the less warping your prints should have, for certain filaments at least. The heater and the cooler that you'll see later were provided free of charge by Martillo Tech to be tested in accordance with my review policy. And as you'll see, that means transparent and honest results. I have to say, this product made a great first impression. We have a hard copy manual that is very informative, and my only complaint is that there's not a digital version available on their website. Underneath a layer of packing foam, we have the actual heater and its permanently attached power cord. The thing about this is that it's actually a 3D printed part, but you can't really tell by looking at it. The quality of the part appears very good, and combined with the nicely labelled additional parts like mounting hardware and activated carbon for the filter, there's a feeling of premium design and polish. For installation instructions, we come to the help page of the website and click the link to the chamber heater installation guide. Now strangely enough, these are a series of still images, but they look like they're taken from screen caps of a video. Nevertheless, they were informative enough for me to get the job done. Again, I only have one complaint, and that's that QR codes are embedded that point you to Bambu Lab videos. These videos are useful, so it makes sense to link directly to them rather than just having the QR code in an image. Installation is quite straightforward if you follow the steps, so I'm going to rush through it here. Vitally important, we need to switch off the printer and completely unplug it from the wall, and that's because we will be dealing with mains power. In summary, we feed the cord for the heater through a gap inside the printer, remove the recover by undoing all of the screws, undo some more screws to shift items and create a better pathway for the cable, remove some more parts like the waste chute, as well as the cover for the power supply and PCB, and then we reach the crucial part, which is matching the colors for the two main wires, loosening the screws for the terminals, feed in the matching color wire behind, and then torque up the screw to clamp the two together. Once you've checked and double checked that everything is safe, you can close the terminal cover and start to reinstall the cover that goes over the PCB and power supply. From here, it's just a matter of reversing our order of operations, reattaching parts that were removed, and doing up screws. This portion took me around 30 minutes to complete. For the last part, we need to remove the right-hand side panel. And for me, this is where things got complicated, but others shouldn't have the same problems as I. The linked Bambu Lab wiki has a video guide to the new version, but I guess mine is the old because there was way more steps than what was pictured here. What should have been a 5-minute job became another 30 minutes as I had to pull the recover back off. The aim of taking off this panel is to get the chamber heater in its final position. There's an L-shaped slot in the underside that interfaces with the floor, and then you will fix the top of the chamber heater to the inner frame using the hardware supplied. Once you put that exterior panel back on, the final step in installation is to remove the magnetic drawer and fill it up completely with the activated carbon that came in the kit. To me, it almost looks like a factory part. So how does it work? On the top of the heater, we have our main power button that will turn it on, and then the button to the left of this will toggle the heater on and off, and when it's off, it just acts as a filtration device. You'll notice a blue trim pot on the left. This is to set the temperature, with the lowest being 45 degrees and the highest setting being 60 degrees Celsius. And then finally we have a motion sensor on the top. That is used in conjunction with this automatic to manual toggle switch on the side. When you have this set to automatic, the sensor will detect the motion of the gantry and turn on the heater automatically anytime you print. That means the heater will turn off when the print is finished, saving you some power. However, I did find that for AMS prints, that when the nozzle was purging, it was stationary for long enough that the heater did power down. So for the most stable temperature, I'd recommend using manual mode. To test for deformation, I designed this warp torture test. It's designed so that the outer sections are skinny, will cool down first and shrink, but the middle will stay hot and peel the feet up off the bed. If you want to learn more about the type of shapes that will and won't warp, I've got this old video linked in the description. And if you want to print this test yourself, it's free and open source on Printables. Using this is pretty simple. You place it in the center of the bed and hit print. The only thing you need to check for is that you don't have any type of bed adhesion like a brim or mouse ears. Depending on the material, this one will take up to 2 hours, but at least it only uses under 70 grams of filament per print. With the heater off, I then printed this 4 times in ASA, ABS, polycarbonate and nylon. I used the Bambu Lab engineering plate as my bed, with a fresh coating of Dimmerfix before every print. This is a very winning combination that gives me excellent results. But this part is designed to be a torture test, so my normal prints don't warp, but all of these absolutely did. Some of them to the point where I had to stop the print early. And when a print warps badly enough, the layers tend to compress and leave artifacts on the walls, and the top layers lift up and collide with the nozzle too. Now obviously we want baseline chamber temperatures, and we can see the printer's thermistor was measuring 45 degrees with the new chamber heater switched completely off. As a secondary measurement, I also put a thermocouple probe in the top corner of the door, hanging around 40 mils inside the chamber. Mid-print, again with the chamber heater off, I measured around 55 degrees on this. So let's turn on the heater and test some of the claims. They say it has rapid heating, instantly hitting 60 degrees Celsius, and that on this setting you can dry 4 spools of filament sitting on the bed. So to start, I set the temperature trim pot to its highest setting, 60 degrees, and then turned on the unit overall, and then pressed the heating button before finally verifying that hot air was coming out of the outlet at the bottom. The bed and nozzle were left off at this stage. As for volume, my room at ambient is around 22.5 decibels. With the chamber heater on, that rises to 58 and drops a little bit when the door is shut. Starting at a temperature of 27 degrees, it was clear that things were progressing quite slowly. I left the printer for 20 minutes and came back to find it teetering between 42 and 43 degrees. I think it's fair to say that filament drying will be a struggle without putting on the heated bed as well. And just for comparison's sake, here's the same test on the new H2D. Again, with just the chamber heater on, the temperature rose steadily, and 20 minutes later it had topped out at 58 degrees. So how did the reprints go? The exact same G-code, but this time with the chamber heater switched on and set to max. Firstly, the mid-print temperatures, and with the chamber heater off, we were measuring 45 degrees. And now, with the chamber heater on, we saw a 5-degree increase to a measured temperature of 50 degrees. Thermocouple wise, last time with the heater off, we saw around 55 degrees, and with the chamber heater on, that increased to 57 degrees. So it's definitely hotter in there, just not as hot right up in the top left-hand corner. Let's compare our printed samples back to back for warping, and to help with that, I've got this thick alloy plate that is flat across the middle. We start with our ASA before sample, and as you can see, it does curl up on the ends. This is seen with the light as well as rocking it back to back so it touches on the ends. Here's the after sample for ASA, and again, the light is shining through on the edges. The shape also rocks from side to side. And here's the 2 samples side by side. I think you can see that there's slightly less warping on the right hand one, but it's not gone completely. Next, ABS, and again, the edges have lifted up as you would expect, and the bottom is not flat as the shape rocks from side to side. And now the heater on version, which again shows some signs of lifting on the corners and is not flat underneath as shown by this rocking. And here's the before and after prints side by side, and I'd say these two look pretty much identical. Now polycarbonate, and as you can see this stuff warps a lot more than the other two. There's big gaps underneath each side and the rocking test looks more like something from a boat. And then the second sample with the heater on is pretty much the same. We've got lifting on both edges and the rocking test is quite exaggerated. Side by side, I think the version with the heater on has a millimeter or two less deviation, so the warping is there but is reduced. Finally, this old roll of nylon, and as you can see this was a complete disaster with huge warping and I stopped the print early. It would be a miracle for this result to be turned around from the chamber heater. This time I let the print finish, despite the fact it didn't really look much better. I think this particular roll of nylon is like the final boss for warping. Side by side, I think we have a marginal improvement. There's a millimeter or two less deflection for the heater on version, but there's still significant warping and it's a terrible print. So we did have some improvement, but it was hardly dramatic. From here we can turn to the instructions that tell us to achieve higher temperatures, we can insulate the inside of the metal panels. But looking inside the printer, this isn't going to be particularly easy. The surfaces have all sorts of things covering them, and I think most of a disassembly would be required. Especially for me, whose printer has an older construction with screws that can't be covered over. So instead, I investigated the other suggestion by following the QR code to this page and looking at this bamboo poop chute with a magnetic seal. Obviously the waste chute at the back is going to allow air to get in and out, and this design seals it completely. A solution like this should stop drafts and also maybe get the internal temperature a little higher. Rather than spend time in filament printing it, I decided to do a simple test by taping some foam to the rear and blocking the chute completely. Unfortunately, not much changed, with the chamber thermistor reading 50 degrees, the same as before, and my thermocouple still reading 57 degrees. Despite this, I think there was a slight improvement. The very edge has still lifted, but compared to the version with the heater off, it's lifted only on the tip instead of most of the way along. Out of interest, I ran the same filament and slicer settings in the H2D with the chamber set to 60 degrees. As you can see, despite the hotter chamber, this is the worst ABS warping I've experienced. So how much better can we improve things by adding a bed adhesive like Dimafix? Well, quite a bit actually. There's about a third as much deflection with the bed adhesive, and in both cases the heater chamber was on and set to 60. Tackling warping needs a combination of solutions. Something like Dimafix or similar really helps, and this chamber heater will help too, that for best results you're probably going to need to spend some time and effort adding insulation. The other product I was sent was the Extruder cooler. It feeds cool air down the reverse Bowden tube to cool the hobbed gears on the extruder, and for any printer that experiences heat creep, this should stop the filament from softening and jamming in the extruder. This one is also priced at $150 US. Inside the box, again we have high quality written instructions, the actual cooler unit which is self-contained and sits on the table besides the printer, a separate power brick and cable to power the cooler, and a series of tubes, cable ties and PTFE couplers for installation. My X1C has never experienced heat creep problems or jams, and that didn't change when the chamber heater was installed. But the Bambu Lab wiki does have an article on heat creep, specifically relating to the X1 Carbon and other printers, so I guess it can be a thing. One printer I tested that suffered horribly from heat creep, with PETG at least, was the Creality K2+. Anytime I had the front door shut, the filament would soften, buckle and jam over and over and over. This cooler isn't specific to any printer, and I think the K2 Plus would really benefit from it, but I can't test them because they've already been donated to schools where they'll be printing PLA. So I don't have a printer experiencing heat creep on me, but I can at least recreate this test, printing in PETG with a PLA support interface layer. And for that, I chose this support test by FOTMAS, scaled 200% in X and Y. As you can see, blue is the main PETG, and the orange is PLA, which is the barrier interface layer. So let's see if the single nozzle changing temperature between the two filaments causes heat creep and if we can see an improvement with the cooler. The first thing I wanted to do was plug this in separately to the printer and see just how cool the air exit was from it. With the ambient temperature at 21 degrees in my room, I turned on the cooler and pointed the output directly above the thermocouple. The air coming out does feel cool, but after a minute or so, the temperature of the thermocouple remained at 21 or 22 degrees. I let the cooler sit there running for around half an hour, and after that it was able to lower the thermocouple by a few degrees, The website states that the coldest point will be the output tube just before the condensate filter, and the metal section of the condensate filter is definitely the coldest part of the whole mechanism. But that's not where it connects to the printer, so I think this is a more real-world test. Installation is really straightforward and is covered in a 144-minute video. We cut the PTFE tube in between the AMS output and the buffer, and in the middle plug in this bleed connector. The center has 4 holes to let any cool air escape instead of being pumped into the AMS. We have a replacement piece of tube with a larger inner diameter that goes between the back of the printer and the print head, and then the final step is to install more of this enlarged tube, and between it and the buffer fit this Y splitter that will allow the cool air to be pumped in. Finally, we have some silicon tube that runs from the cooler output to the Y splitter input, and now we can switch on the cooler and visualize how it works. The cool air will come out, have condensation filtered before it travels up to the Y splitter, where it then, along with the filament, goes through the print head to the extruder. In terms of operating volume, this one comes in the low 50 decibel range. During operation, we can see the condensate filter working in real time, as here come a series of moisture bubbles, but they never find their way into the output tube, and after a 3.5 hour test print, we can see how much moisture has been collected. If you want to fit a larger bottle, there's a printed adapter to replace this glass vial and use a larger soft drink bottle or similar. Let's compare results for a before and after test. The version on the left printed without the cooler turned on, and the version on the right printed with the cooler running the whole way through. This print was also a good test because it had 61 filament changes, and I'm pleased to say the modified feed path with the extra tube didn't cause any issues. In terms of before and after, I can't actually see any difference, and that's simply because I wasn't experiencing any heat creep related problems before fitting this cooler. This is a product that with the right application should be very beneficial. I just don't have that application available to test. As we can see, the air is a fair bit cooler than ambient as it comes out of the top, but it does absorb some heat by the time it comes through the printer and into the top of the print head. Despite this, there will always be less heat inside the tube compared to not having the cooler fitted. On paper, I think this cooler does make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, I just don't have a problem printer to test it on. Overall, these are polished and nicely designed products, but just keep in mind that they're not magic bullets. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy 3D printing. G'day, it's Michael again. If you liked the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe, and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.